Peace to the saints. Today's topic is The Godfather. That is the movie, the classic, and we're going through the lessons on manhood and the lessons on family. Yes, family is a critical piece. I'm going to take you through all the notes therein, and I actually made a list. So I got a whole page of notes for you. Number one, if you haven't seen the Godfather movie, I would never tell you to turn off my stream, but turn off my stream, watch the movie, and then come back. I don't want to ruin the movie for you because it is indeed a classic, and it's very rare that you get a piece of cinematic art that represents a time period so well, represents an organization, represents a culture, and has so many lessons embedded in it. So I don't want to ruin that for you. But for those of you who have seen The Godfather, let us carry on. Number one, you'll find that the entirety of the movie is really marked by culture. Culture is that thing that regulates your thinking, your behavior, and it allows each person within a culture to be predictable at some level. For example, with the Italians, you know how they're going to greet you. You know that how they're going to dress. You even know how their hair is going to be styled. You know who they view as a part of their family or a part of this thing of ours. You know what groups or what ethnicities they look down on. These are all aspects of culture, and you find culture is extremely strong within this movie. But the important thing for us to learn from this is that it's a culture that you self-select into, which really are the most powerful cultures. Because at the end of the day, to be born Vietnamese, Italian, Peruvian, etc., what does that really mean if you didn't choose to be that? It's just a thin veneer of who you are. Who you choose to be is much greater. One of the early things that you hear in the movie, particularly during the wedding scene when someone goes to make a request of the Godfather, it is stated that the Godfather is a very religious, sacred title and position to the Italians, and it is connected to the religion of Catholicism. And so they've actually connected their religion and their ethnicity and their crime organization and their family all rolled in one. But it's actually quite important when you think of it that it has religious significance, and this all feeds into the concept of patriarchy, which is leadership by males. And in this case, the patriarch is the Godfather. And a part of his power arises from the reality that he is actually revered in this religious light. And to be a godfather to someone's child is something that requires ceremony, generally given by a Catholic priest. And so when you have that touch of God laid upon you, especially those who are religious, they're going to follow you more seriously. And that's really the key to the strength of the mob in such organizations. Now, here's the fascinating piece when you're talking about patriarchy, male leadership. The Godfather is actually the patriarch of the entire organization, which they refer to as a family, and family is very powerful. And so they're very strategic by using these pre-existing powerful institutions and symbols to the Italian people, namely Catholicism. Secondly, there was a meaningful scene, and it was the first time during the movie that I chuckled, and I really had to respect it, and I understood the thinking there. There was a time when communities were generally ethnic enclaves, not arranged according to your income. Today, usually communities are based on income. Before, when you had ethnic enclaves, which is to say, that's the Black area, that's the Latino neighborhood, that's the Jewish neighborhood, you really regulated your own affairs because the policing force was largely, white Anglo-Saxon. And if you were Italian or Irish or Black or Jewish, you didn't necessarily trust the policing force. And for that reason, you were less inclined to call 911 to resolve your problems. You generally resolved them amongst yourselves. This is what allowed for organized crime to really thrive in these ethnic neighborhoods. So at the beginning of this movie, you have a gentleman who comes in. He's a mortician, like not a mortician, a guy who runs a funeral home. And he comes in because his daughter had been victim of unfortunate things at the hands of some American boys, white boys. And, this time period, Italians were not quite considered white yet. You'll see that over time in America, the definition of many things have evolved. The definition of colored has evolved. In fact, the term has become obsolete and gone out of usage. The definition of white has expanded. It didn't used to include certain groups like Jewish people or Italians. and now it has come to include them. And that's a meaningful thing to understand in the context of American racial politics. But regardless, to the point, the guy who runs the funeral home, he comes into the Godfather on the day of his daughter's wedding and makes a request of him, which is a part of the Italian mafia Catholic culture. So he makes a request and he says, hey, these guys have abused my daughter and I need justice. I went to the American courts and they basically gave them a slap on the wrist and let them go free after they abused my daughter in a way such that they removed the beauty from her face and it will never turn. I can't even look at her in the same way. And the Godfather's first question, which was a reasonable one and points to his authority, he says, quote, why didn't you come to me first? Why did you go to the police? This is critical for us to understand when you have a shadow government, which is essentially what a mafia is. It's a shadow government. It operates like government. It has hierarchy. It has enforcers, i.e. police. It has soldiers. It engages in warfare. It charges taxes to people. It gives services. It is like a government. And so he said, well, why did you go to that government instead of my government first? Which is to say, why did you not respect my authority? But now you come here with your hand out begging from me. And sure enough, the guy basically concedes that he didn't want to get into trouble. He didn't want to get mixed up with the mob. Now, you don't want to get mixed up till you need help. I understand. This is how human beings generally are. Fickle is the word. Fickle. Not very loyal. They're fair weather friends. When things get shaky, they want to disappear, or they only want to appear when they can benefit from you. So then he says, okay, well, now that you have come to me, you didn't even think to call me Godfather, which is to say, show me my respect, acknowledge the existent hierarchy here, which was an important thing, not for him to boss up on the guy, but rather to establish that now that you've come to me, you're appealing to my authority. You must give me all of the respect that comes with the authority that you're appealing to. Call me Godfather, kiss the ring. Not to make the guy feel low, but just to say, hey, this is my identity. You need to respect it in its fullness. Not just that I can do you a favor, but also that I am indeed the boss of bosses. So dude calls him Godfather, kisses the ring as he should. And then Godfather says, okay, well, what justice do you seek? The guy names his version of justice that he's seeking, which was actually not justice. He was seeking something that was extreme and something that was unjust. The Godfather, being a rational man, and you'll notice this is a theme, being rational, being objective, being business-minded, the Godfather says, no, that is not justice. Your daughter still lives. You have asked me to do murder. Your daughter still lives. And then the guy says, well, my daughter suffers. Can you make them suffer? And the Godfather says, consider it done. The second thing I really want you all to highlight, and it's very important, this lecture is about manhood and family, which are intimately intertwined. There are some cultures that have forgotten about the meaning of family. And in some cases, maybe they never knew. Not saying that the African-American, well, I guess that would make sense. The African-American as a collective has forgotten about the concept of family and how it really functions. And that's because the patriarch of the African-American family has been the United States government. But we're going to talk about family, and family starts with romantic relations between male and female. What you would have observed during the movie 2 times were weddings. The movie starts with a wedding, and then you see an additional wedding during the movie, which is when Michael Corleone gets married to the girl in Italy. And you have to observe that there's 2 weddings, which would suggest to you that this is really an important institution. And this is a major hallmark of family. This is the consummation of 2 individuals coming together in union from which a family can spring. Now, even with these weddings and the marriages, you still see characters like Sonny or Santino, the older brother of Michael, the hothead. Even though he was married, we still saw him getting it in with his side piece. In the Italian culture, they have a formal term for this, which is gumar. And I think a lot of cultures have a formal term for this. And even despite having the side girl within their culture, families don't break, marriages don't break. And so they pretty much, everyone knows their role and they carry on. So I wanted to highlight that you saw 2 marriages occurred during the movie, which it's an indication of the culture. It's also an indication that you never have the patriarch, the leader, without a main woman, without a spouse. And this is something you also see in pretty much every developed culture in America. Have we ever had a president who was unmarried? Just imagine the president's a bachelor. You dig? You see the president on Tinder, little broad at home swipe, and she says, oh, is that the president? No, the men who are established have established relationships. This is something that builds your foundation for peace and success. A good woman. Secondly, this is really important, and I want you all to spread the word on this, and this is completely in line with the ism, which is that when two individuals come together in marriage or in a serious relationship, a man and a woman, let none interfere. There is a scene where they're sitting at the dinner table and Sonny is, senior in the mob, and he is, older brother to this young lady. And the young lady starts speaking out of turn, and her husband says, "Be silent." And then Santino says, "Don't talk to my sister like that." And then Santino's mother, who should be able to identify with that wife who was told to be silent, the mother said, "Santino, do not get involved in their affairs. Mind your own business." Which is to say, once the girl who was a daughter to a patriarch, once she left out of that family and he gave her away to another man, a new patriarch, that girl is now wife to that man. Her primary identity is not daughter, nor is it sister. Her primary identity is wife, and her primary leader and protector is her husband. So her husband will lead her, will dominate her. He will be the one who decides on her affairs. He'll be the last word. And it was very wise for the mother with her wisdom to say, do not involve yourselves in their affairs. He will talk to his wife how he wills. You stay out of it. Very meaningful. And in fact, you all will notice that your relationships will go much better if your in-laws play their position as in-laws, which does not include them being in your relationship. A relationship is best between two persons. And let us all know, whether it's the male or the female, when you are pursuing a lifelong relationship with an individual human being, you now have to prioritize them over everyone else, including your parents. Why? Your parents will expire within 30 years. Your spouse is supposed to be with you another 60 years. Make the smart move on the long bet. This is not to say that your spouse is more important than your parents. This is to say that you're investing in the hope that they will be more important than your parents to you. And let your parents be wise enough to take the back seat as appropriate. This is not to say don't respect your parents. One of the most important quotes, and I saw one of the saints had dropped this in the live chat, he being the Godfather, stated, quote, "I spent my whole life trying not to be careless. Women and children can afford to be careless, but not men," end quote. Very meaningful quotation. I often say similar things, which is to recommend that you be serious, which means mindful, cognizant of your actions and environment. Women can be careless, as the Godfather puts it. You see, when I walk down the street, if someone bumps into me, it's generally a woman. She wasn't paying attention, or she wasn't rightly assessing distance. Depth perception is not very good, or she didn't think there would be consequences, which there generally aren't. But when I'm walking down the street, men almost never bump into me. Why? They know that there can be consequences for bumping into men they don't know. Men should always be aware, cautious, and serious, not careless. This is so true. Increasingly today, we have males behaving like children. Nothing wrong with having lightheartedness, but there's much wrong with being thoughtless. Yes, there's much wrong. You are not fit to be a leader when you are in that state. I have a quotation here that relates to Sonny. It's a quotation from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. When he was asked for advice from a young man, he said, "Don't get mad." The young man said, "Well, if you had more advice to give, what other piece of advice would you give?" And Prophet Muhammad said, "Don't get mad." When you get angry and you become out of control, you put yourself at great risk. Santino, also known as Sonny, the gentleman who became the Don when his father was gunned down and survived, he heard that his sister was being abused physically by her husband, meaning the man she chose to be with till death do us part. And instead of thinking or seeking counsel from his consigliere, his chosen advisor, or being a wise, rational man, he flew off the handle and immediately ran off to commit an act of violence, unwarranted. And when he ran off, this was during a war, he ran off so quickly that his bodyguards did not have the opportunity to be ahead of him or even be caught up with him, flanking him. And because he outpaced his bodyguards, he was easily set up and he was turned into Swiss cheese, had his lights cut off, in other words. Which is to say, that situation was just as much suicide as it was homicide, for his anger led him to a very bad outcome. It's truly sad. And your anger can be a result can cause your undoing as well. How many times do men end up in prison for losing control and laying a hand upon the woman within their house, and then only for her to call the coppers and have you rolled out in the paddy wagon, whether she deserved it or not? Never let anyone outside the family know what you're thinking, end quote. Made me understand the importance of respecting hierarchy in public and expressing any grievances in private. Moving this way has served me well personally and professionally. You have a weak man when he speaks too much. That is feminine in general. You talk too much. Maybe limit yourself on the words, increase yourself in actions. You'll have more outcomes. You'll have more wealth. You'll have more of all the good things in life if you would just close your mouth and take those thoughts and turn those thoughts into actions. You have too many words, most of us. And here's the second part. Let you have some level of loyalty to where you don't speak against your family, especially those who are in superior positions. You do not differ from them by word. You do not engage in conflict or contradiction, especially in public. It is disrespectful, and it makes you look disloyal. It makes your whole family look disorganized and weak. For us, it's so important. When I say us, I'm talking about the saints, our family, because one of the important things you'll notice throughout the movie is racism. It's consistent in the movie, which is fine. You're hearing racial or racist terms used to describe Italians. You're hearing racist terms used to describe blacks. And it's actually quite important that they have these terms to define in-group and out-group. And we love our in-group, we revile the out-group. And it's critically important because they use race to identify one another. You see, they can look, say, oh, that guy's one of us. He's Italian. Oh, that guy's black. He's not one of us. With the saints, your conduct is your uniform. I want you to observe the difference in a good Don and a bad Don. The Godfather, when he received news of the death of his own child, his own son, his firstborn son, his immediate response verbally was, quote, "I want no acts of vengeance. I want no acts of vengeance." That's what he said after he figured out Sonny was dead. Why? He said that because he is thinking big picture, number one, and number two, he is thinking with his rational mind, not succumbing to untamed emotion. This is in direct contradiction to his firstborn son, Sonny, who died because of his own untamed emotion. That's a good Don and a bad Don. Bad Don is emotional. Good Don is strategic. You'll find that Michael Corleone was the same way throughout the entirety of the film. And even if you track him from the very beginning, you find that when he was speaking, it was often devoid of emotion. Not to say that emotion is ever the enemy, for it is not. Untamed emotion is the enemy. And Michael always had his emotions under control. There's even a scene where he's talking to Carlo, which was the husband, the late husband of his sister. And he says to Carlo, he says, if you do this, this, and this, it gets me very mad and angry. He even said mad and angry calmly, which lets you know the high level of emotional control that the gentleman was displaying. Dr. Screech is right, sending tuition. I have to catch this live tomorrow morning. Indeed, appreciate you. Another thing you'll observe about Michael Corleone, who really was the top of the line in terms of godfathers and mafia bosses, because he was the bridge between the old way of doing things, all muscle, all crime, and the new way of doing things involves some technology, some innovation, and some American business savvy and legitimized things. He always had a main piece. He was always constructing his family, not only the crime family, but also his immediate family. You see, when he was in America initially, he had Kay, the wasp girl. Then when he had to go into hiding, he had the Italian girl from the rural countryside in Italy. And she was a real looker. I was quite a fan of hers. So he always had a main piece. Now understand, this is radically different than what you're hearing with men going their own way, or a lot of these separatist movements that want to be separate from women, which is very strange. And there is another word for that. It's a 3-letter word, which we'll avoid for the time being, but you get what I'm saying. Another thing in terms of hierarchy, and I really want you all to internalize this, because there's hierarchy in all things. There is more inequality than there is equality. Equality is a fabrication of good men. We sometimes we fabricate equality for the purpose of, helping society move along. But inequality is far more natural, which is to say, what does nature do? Nature makes me 6 foot and makes my brother 6'3". What does nature do? Nature allows me to run like the wind, but my brother is slower. What does nature do? Nature does things without fairness, without regard to your emotion. Nature creates inequality, and the only thing you could ever call fair or equal results from what good men have approximated, what we have created. We treat everyone with equal worth. Everyone gets an equal vote. But in reality, there is no equality. Not equality in size, not equality in intellect, charm, not equality in ambition, not equality in many of the things that matter in this world. You never go to the Olympics and you see them give out, here's a first place in the first place. You all get gold. No, it's gold, silver, bronze. Inequality is the truth. Equality is a myth. Another piece that we need to understand. You'll observe that the Godfather only reasons with his peers. When I say reasons, I mean talks out ideas and talks through ideas, engaging in the reasoning process, logical reasoning, thinking, exploring ideas, challenging ideas. Godfather engages in that process with peers, meaning other bosses of families, other heads of families, other patriarchs. What he does not do is he does not reason with those who are lower in the hierarchy, capos, soldiers. He gives them directives or orders. That is because hierarchy can only be maintained when you do not create the false feel of equality or being a peer with someone who is higher or lower in the hierarchy. But know this, everyone in the hierarchy is respected for their position. To be lower in the hierarchy does not mean you're an unworthy person or an unimportant person, for we are all a part of this same thing. Give you an example. Luca Brasi, he lower on the hierarchy, he's a soldier. He does hits, but critically important to the operation of the family. Very respected, very loyal. Even if you look at Fredo, the brother of Michael Corleone, the boss, the Godfather. Fredo is a dim-witted fellow. Incompetent, not good looking, not stylish, has very little going for him. But when Mo Green slapped him around, Michael said, you were straightening out my brother? Which is to say, he's in my family. He's one of us. Don't matter if he's at the top or the bottom of the organization, you don't disrespect one of us. He's a part of this thing. And if he's a part of this, it's hands off. That's the same thing with Assassin, you dig? You a part of this? Hey, they got to keep their hands off. You'll notice that the boss, the Godfather, was willing to reason with his peers. So for example, when there were some murders that occurred and they called the round table and all the bosses from the different regions showed up and they had that conversation, like the commission, which was organized by Lucky Luciano in real life, they basically had a commission. The bosses talked among one another and reasoned and disagreed, but never when they're talking within their families did they have disagreement coming up from the bottom. You did find that people would drive the thinking of the boss, or they would question him to get him to think or consider other perspectives, and that was something that was done by the consigliere, whose actual job is specifically to do that. That was his job, to do that. Now, remember this, the boss will reason with other bosses. He'll give directives to the soldiers, and then to the enemies, they give lead. And that's important to know, that you must prosecute your enemy. And that's something that we observe consistently throughout the film, because if you don't prosecute your enemies, then they will prosecute you, or it'll get worse and they'll execute you if you don't do it first. In my book, The Black Box, I have a quotation where I note that you should never operate as though your enemies will not behave as enemies do. And anytime you're not striking at them, you're giving them time to strike at you, which you should never do. So you must always be ruthless with your enemies. And we even observe right now, we have psychopaths who are coming to attack, and we must be ruthless and strategic with them. For if we don't, then they'll continue and they'll be emboldened. Major lesson. But here's the funny thing about gangsters, which this is a gangster movie, but whether you realize it or not, The Godfather is a gangster movie. What you should be learning is that gangsters have morals. And what's more, not only do gangsters have morals, they enforce their morals. This comes in when you heard the heads of the family say, well, we don't deal in drugs. This is a dirty business to us. Or when some of them said, yeah, we'll deal in drugs, but we'll send it among the dark peoples, the darkies. We won't allow our people to use them. We won't sell them around schools. They put regulations, moral law around these things. So not only do they have morals, but they also enforce morals, which is radically different from what we see in our era, where people say they stand for things, but you never see the behavioral manifestation of their principle. For example, you got all these rappers and these New Yorkers saying snitches get stitches. Well, last time I checked, Tekashi 6ix9ine seems to be in good health. So snitches don't get stitches. Snitches get millions of dollars and millions of followers on Instagram. Let's be accurate. An important thing with any organization is in-group and out-group. As I had mentioned previously, you heard them describe blacks by derogatory terms, which is ironic because when you listen to black rappers, all they ever want to do is emulate Italian gangsters. It's comical, isn't it? They want to emulate a group of people that had nothing but disdain for them, which is only an indication of the low level of education and self-image among these persons. But the importance of identifying the in-group, our family, Costa Nostra, and the out-group, the black, the WASP, police, is so that we don't ever behave like them. We have to look down on them and demonize their behavior and their way of living so that we can strengthen those who have our way of life, strengthen them in our ideology, our mindset, our behavior, our culture, our way of life. It's necessary. Now just imagine how this manifests itself in the ways of the woman. When you have a woman around you within your culture, doesn't it make sense to say, oh, that girl's a thought? That's disgusting. You have to demonize it so that the little girls don't want to grow up and be that. You know, if you're watching a rap music video at home, somehow it comes on and your daughter's seeing that, you're like, oh, look at that. Why is her underwear up her behind like that? That's nasty. You have to condition that, and you have to demonize the outgroup behavior. Because if you don't demonize the outgroup behavior, what happens? Persons that are in your group will eventually get out of your group because they're behaving like the others. Your culture breaks down. What is the mob and the mafia except a very strong, close-knit culture with serious rules that are to be followed, called blood in, blood out. I often talk about being objective, rational, and business-minded. I think business-minded is the best way to describe it because the businessman is always looking for the profit. The profit does not always have to be financial. Profit can be happiness. Profit can be many different values. There are different capitals in life. There's spiritual capital, there's financial capital, there's happiness, there's much more. I point this out because one thing we observe Godfather, there were 3 Godfathers in the movie. The original Godfather, then there was Santino, and then there was Michael Corleone. The original Godfather was rational. He looked at the big picture. He even forgave the other Don who caused the death of his own son. Why? For the preservation of peace, business, and the preservation of his son that was still living. So he was looking at the big picture. What can I gain from making this decision? What would I lose from making an alternative decision? It's called a cost-benefit analysis in the context of business. Conversely, Santino, when he was Don, he actually ended up getting himself killed because he couldn't make an appropriate cost-benefit analysis, and he was being led by his emotion. He was not thinking about profit. He was not thinking with a business mind. He was thinking with child's mind. Here's an important thing that you have to observe in this movie. Think about all the female characters that occurred in the movie. Did any of them do the work of men? Did any of them have a man's job? Did any of them do a man's activity? You might not have even noticed any of them wearing pants, which is historically the garb of a man. You would have observed that they all were in feminine role, wife, mother. And in the case of the WASP girl, the eventual wife of Michael Corleone, she was a school teacher of young children, like a kindergarten teacher, something like that. That's an important thing. A major key to hierarchy is role and role definition and not getting outside of your role role because you know your role. And not one point did you see a woman leading a man. Not one point did you see a woman doing the job of a man or even wanting and seeking to do a job of a man. And what's more, you even observe that there was a point at which you had a woman trying to get into the business of a man. And Michael Corleone 2 times repeated to his wife, do not ask about my business, not our business, my business, which is to say you are cut off from this information. It's on a need to know basis and you don't ever need to know. Now, juxtapose that to what you all deal with in women when they think they need to know everything, where you're going, who you're going to be with, what time you're getting back. They need to know everything. Juxtapose that to this golden era where he says, you will not get into my business. And then the one time he made an accommodation, which was not really an accommodation, it was a psychological tactic. He said, I'm going to let you ask me about my business just this one time, meaning in all of your life, this one time you can ask about my business. So she proceeds to ask about his business. And then what does he do? He lies to her. Why? Because one, she wanted to be lied to, because most of them can't handle the truth. Because if she didn't want to be lied to, she wouldn't have asked the question because the answer was already clear. So as a boss, he took an executive decision to say, you know what? I can see right now that you're not going to do well with this truth. It's not going to benefit the family. I'm going to tell you the fairy tale you want me to tell you. And so he did. Very important thing. Now, this doesn't make him a liar. See, a liar would be all encompassing, but did he lie? Very clearly he did. This only speaks to the naive nature of the female. And at some level, you have to appreciate that because there is some utility within the female's naivete. So for example, when Michael comes back from Italy and he tells Kay that he's now working in the family business, which is organized crime, Kay says, well, I thought you were nothing like your family or nothing like your father. Father is a bad guy. And he says, no, my father's not a bad guy. He's no different than any other powerful man. Kay then responds and says, yeah, but senators don't have people killed. You're naive, Michael. And then Michael says, oh, senators don't have people killed? Who's really naive, Kay? Which is very meaningful because she's willingly chosen a blindness, and because certain pieces of information and propaganda, she's been enculturated to a belief that our politicians don't kill, right? Not like war is killing, is war? War's not killing, is it? When we send an army over to Afghanistan or Syria or Iraq, that's not killing, is it? Yeah, it's killing by a different name. We call it war, but it is killing, and killing is murder, right? And so that's the meaningful piece of, him partly pulling the wool from over her eyes, but also leaving it because it can never truly be removed because that is her nature and personality, the naivete. And she needs that as a psychological device. Conversely, his sister, who grew up within the family business, she knows what it is. She pretty much knows when she gets married, her husband's going to be cheating on her. Well, they wouldn't even call it cheating. He's going to have a gumar, which is like a side girl. That is an institution. Side girls are an institution in the mafia. Just like in France, I think for their leaders, having a mistress is also an institution. So she understands what it is. It is culturally decided she would not break her marriage because her husband's stepping out. There was even a scene wherein she answers the phone in the husband's side piece called the landline. Hey, tell Carlo I can't make it tonight. Who's this? Oh, this is a friend of Carlos. Hangs up. She knows what it is, but she didn't bring it up to Carlos. She starts talking about dinner straight away, which lets you know that there's been a cultural acceptance. And at a certain level, your culture has to make a decision on what are the things that we prize within our culture. In that culture, they prize family, marriage, and family and marriage not breaking. And we can suffer a side piece or two. It is what it is, because after all, these guys are gangsters. And gangsters do what they want to do for the most, unless they're violating our cultural principles, one of which is family. And early on in the movie, you hear the Godfather say, you're not a man if you don't take care of your family. I repeat, you're not a man if you don't take care of your family. You're not a man if you don't take care of your family. I had to say that 4 or 5 times just now because there are certain people that need to hear that, certain cultures that need to hear that. I want you to understand that creativity is not the most important thing. You see, a lot of people are creative which usually springs forward ideas. Creativity doesn't spring forward action, it springs forward ideas. I'd much rather be productive than creative. So fine, I can listen to others who are creative and then I'll be the producer and I'll create the product and then I'll get all the money. So always focus on the outcome, what drives the dollars. So often we are kind of hung up on the shiny side of life. I like those quiet men who get things done. Everyone has a role. Luca Brazzi's role was as a soldier. He wasn't an earner. He wasn't a hustler. He didn't bring money to the family. He was a soldier. He did hits for the family. And then when you look at Michael versus Sonny, that was the business mindset versus the untamed emotional. And one thing I want to point out to you guys is that Michael never got sidetracked. The purpose of the family was business. That was the purpose. Every organization should have a mission and a mission statement. Michael never diverged from the mission. Sonny diverged rapidly and it led to his demise. Here's another one. This is critical right here. It says, quote, "Don't ever take sides with anyone against the family." One of my favorite quotes, end quote. Don't ever take sides with anyone against the family. This is really important. This is how I know when I'm looking at the comments, I'll every now and then see someone say like, "Yeah, Marquette, I love your stuff, but I also rock with so-and-so," or "I love your stuff, but you were wrong on this." It's like, no. If you love my stuff, or if you love me and I was wrong on something, send me a direct message. Don't put that in the public. We don't live like that. Help your friends and family. Love your friends and family. Do not air their mistakes. So for example, there have been times I've been having public discussions with the saints and one of the saints might use a word improperly. Did I stop the conversation and say, "Oh, you used the word conversate"? Conversate is not a word. The proper word is converse. Did I give that correction in public? Absolutely not. I will not embarrass someone that is one of us. I will not correct them impolitely in public, but in private, big if, I think it's appropriate and it's helpful, not to me, but helpful to them. Helpful not to my ego feeling like I'm smart, but helpful to them. Hey, Saint, you had said conversate, which I've said that in the past too, but the word is converse. And I know you're going to be giving speeches, talking to important people. I want you to reflect how intelligent you are. The word's converse. And if they're truly saintly, they will appreciate that. I will never speak out negatively about one of my own. Many of you have asked me, there are people you've seen that I've done some business with, and you say, "Well, Marquette, what about so-and-so? You should roast so-and-so. So-and-so and I have good relation." The truth is clear to all of us. I don't need to speak on what is obvious. I'm not going to roast this person. We have good relation. There's no need to create enemies where there are friends. There's no need to turn an ally into a neutral party or into an enemy. It's foolish and it's not my personality. My personality is loyalty. I was raised by criminals and I was raised in the street. My personality is loyal. Go on the stand, lie for your man, burn for your man if that's how it has to be. Those are my values. I live and die by that. That's how I was raised. My own mother does not believe in snitching. My mom, you might add a soccer mom. My mom did time. My dad did time. My grandma did time. That's the ethic I was raised in. We deal with each other. We don't deal with the police. Call it wrong, call it what you want, but that's my culture and I abide by my culture staunchly. And that's just happens to be in line with the Godfather movie, getting back to the core topic. But let me let you all know, you are not a part of the family. You take positions against the family. You're a disgrace to your father. You're a disgrace to anyone. There's another quote, and this was really funny to me. It cracked me up. Michael Corleone was talking to Carlo. Carlo was the husband of his sister. Carlo was the husband of Michael's sister. And he had realized that Carlo has set up his brother Sonny. Carlo was playing both sides of the fence. Carlo was disloyal. And he said to Carlo, "Just tell me the truth. I mean, come on. You don't think I would make my sister a widow? You don't think that I would take a father away from my godson? Do you?" And then Carlo confessed, and then Michael had him killed. And the answer is, you don't think I would make my sister a widow? The answer is yes, absolutely I would. Absolutely. A boss must be ruthless. And that's one thing I've always prided myself on, not from watching the Godfather movie, but just from watching the world. You can never win unless you're the most ruthless one. You will never win. And I will always exercise extreme levels of ruthlessness. I will always kill an ant with a sledgehammer, and I will never let a grudge go. Even if it's 10 years later and you've not heard from me, do not be surprised if when I catch up to you, I hit you with a sledgehammer, because I will never let it go. Ever. And that's my personality. And I pride myself on ruthlessness. And the same thing with Michael. He prided himself on his ruthlessness. He said, "You think I'd have my sister be a widow? You think I'd have my godson be a father's boy? Absolutely. Don't cross me." Now, guess what? When you know he'll do that to people close to him, surely he'll do it to you as a stranger. So you're going to think long and hard before you play with him. And that's the key. Now, what you should have observed during the course of the movie is that there were a couple moving pieces. At the beginning, when Michael first became boss, people didn't respect him as a boss. We're going to get into that. Shout out to the Saints that I know well, the Saints I've talked to over a long period of time. I had consultations over years, multiple years, been able to see you guys grow. I was just talking to Matthew earlier and just so proud that I remember his first product that he didn't really move the units. Now he did a second product, did a 50-piece order, got 5 pieces left. He sold 45 products. Now he's going on to another third product, because it's appropriate. He's not rushing, and he's going on with the lessons that'll make him a fortune over a lifetime. Very impressed. I got another Saint in Northern Europe I've been talking to for a very long time, and I've seen him. He always knew what was right, this young man. Always he's known what's right. All I do is I'm a mirror. I reflect back onto him the correct things he says. And there was a time months ago he had said something. He said, I'm not going to do this. This is the wrong decision. And I said, you're correct. Then he did that thing. Now he came back today. He says, hey, this was the wrong thing. I said, you knew that was the wrong thing months ago. But such is life. What will the correction be? But his whole life has been going like this. One thing about the Saints financially, they all do this. Every last one of them. Every guy I have conversations with, they're all doing this. The money machines are, and it was just a beautiful thing to talk with him and say, hey man, we've been doing this for 2 years. Do you remember when you had told me that you were having money issues? Do you remember that? It's funny now. Like now it's hilarious. Like now we literally laugh that you ever said that, because it's ridiculous. That's a privilege to me. I'm sorry to go off on that, but it's like, I'm so proud of my guys for winning. I am very proud. Last lesson, and feel free to send me your thoughts and comments, questions now. You'll notice when the Don stepped down due to his old age, infirmity, and he awarded the position of Godfather well due to Michael Corleone. The underbosses wanted to jump ship because they viewed Michael as weak leader, not schooled in the culture. He wasn't raised in the streets. He's an army boy. He wasn't real mafioso or mafiosi. So they tried to jump ship, and the Godfather said, do you have faith in me? Do you have faith in my decision making? Not do you think I'm a good decision maker? Do you have faith? Faith is a religious suggestion. Faith, Godfather, religious title. You become Godfather to a child through a ceremony, religious ceremony, Catholic ceremony. Do you have faith that I know what is right? Yes? Okay, follow Michael. Not do you think, not do you remember me making good decisions? Do you have faith? Follow Michael. So then they follow Michael based on their respect and faith for the Don. Over time, they grew to esteem Michael, and at the very end of the movie, after Michael had wiped out all of his competition, and it took time, and remember this, in the process of wiping out his enemies, a lot of people jumped ship. A lot of people said his family was weak. A lot of people said he didn't have muscle like that. A lot of people said they were being run out of New York. A lot of people said they were scared, on the retreat, in decline. A lot of people had a lot of things to say, but he kept making moves, for he had a grand plan, a vision. He was a strategist, and he did things differently because he knew a way. And at the end, you saw the very same men who said, I want to branch off and start my own family. I want to leave your family, start my own. I don't think you're winning. I want to start something that's going to win. Same guys came and they kissed the rings. They kissed his hand and says, Godfather, Don Corleone. They kiss his hands, movie ends. Which is to say, the one who was the outsider became the insider. The one who was lowly flew to the top. The one who was not believed in now commands religious faith. Meaningful story, but know that when he had the title, he didn't have the power or the juice or the respect. Title means nothing. You got to earn everything in life. Someone can say you're the boss, doesn't mean you're the boss. You can say you're the general, but if the soldiers don't have faith, they won't follow you. There will be mutiny. There will be traitors. So you have to pay the cost to be the boss. That's what the whole movie was about. He paid the cost to be the boss, and it's not all. Do observe that there was one point where he flies out to Vegas, Saint City, you dig? And then he shows up, and his brother, Fredo, the goofball, seeking to, give him a good time, has a bunch of slurs and some business contacts there. And he's saying, hey, enjoy the slurs, and then we'll do business. Michael says, get the slurs out of here. Let's get straight to business. Now, me personally, I would have said, give me 10 minutes with the slurs. Everybody out, leave the slurs. Give me 10 minutes. That's all I need. and we're going to do business right after this. That's just me though. But anyway, I say that to say this. The whole time he's proving himself, and he had to make the appropriate decisions to prove himself and to display who he really is. Because here's the trick to life. No one really knows who you are sometimes, but you sometimes. One thing I'm really good at is spotting talent. There have been times I went to Subway, looked at a sandwich artist making my Subway sandwich, and I could tell that they could be a great person. They didn't know though. I know, but they didn't know. Why do I know? Because I've taken Subway sandwich artists and turned them into C-suite employees in tech companies. I can see talent in people and I can make them perform. I can make them achieve more than they think they can achieve. That's a talent. Being a CEO is not about being able to do everything. It's about being able to get everything done, mostly through other people. So I say that to say this. Sometimes people can't see who you are. You have to show them. Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor, who was actually not French, he was Corsican. But anyways, he became the emperor of France. He was a man of modest stature. There are lies that he was very short. Within the context of his time, he was about average height. Truth be told, according to the scholars. But anyways, he said, men today have not the foggiest sense of what is great. It is upon me to show them. Some might say that's arrogant and cocky. Well, that might be arrogant and cocky if he was a mailman, but being that he became the emperor of France, I'd say that's pretty accurate. You have many people who say foolish things. I've watched documentaries. I remember I was watching a documentary about Joseph Jukashvili Stalin, the guy who ran the Soviet Union, kind of took it up out of the mud through any means necessary. And one historian, which is your job is to write about men greater than you, a historian said he had delusions of grandeur. He was the leader of a whole country. That's not a delusion, that's grandeur. What are we lying about? We're on a planet with wicked human beings who tell lies when they don't like someone. That's what they do. They tell lies when they don't like someone. You have to ask yourself, will you stand for it? Well, you're already standing for it. Will you continue to stand for it? The world wouldn't be this way if you weren't standing for it. I mean, consider this. I found this comical. My engineer had messaged Seth, whom you guys, if you've been to my conference, you met Seth. And he says, Marquette, why didn't you just tell him what an NFT is? I said, because they're beneath me. I don't explain to peon. If they want to know, they can buy the conference footage like everybody else and figure it out. He says, okay. He says, they also said that you pulled a rug pull on a crypto, on our coin, on Assassin coin. You did a rug pull. He's like saying like you tried to fleece everyone for $2,000. He says, well, that doesn't make any sense, Marquette, because I know you took out your fans and you spent more than $2,000 on lunch between all the lunches and dinners you took people out for on your dime. So why would you fleece people for $2,000? He's like, that doesn't make sense because when we released Assassin coin at the conference, it was worth $1 per coin, $1. Today, it's worth $83 a coin. How is that fleecing? Which means you would have had your money multiplied by 80 times. How's that fleecing? It doesn't make any sense. And more importantly, why did we create the coin? Because the conference was about teaching you how to create an NFT, teaching you about how to create a cryptocurrency token, right? That's why we created it. Real life experience. So people will lie, and then you don't have the same, on the side of good, you don't have that same ferociousness. And that's what I'm encouraging you guys to do. If you're fighting demons, you have to employ serious means. And yes, we will be training, you dig? And we will be defining strategy. But one thing I want you guys to remember, and I was talking with Matthew earlier on a consultation, I said, no matter what, be yourself. In that 3 Sentence Bible, be yourself, be good to yourself, be good to good people, be yourself. I'm a hustler. I'm gonna keep hustling. I'm gonna keep going. In my mind, no matter what's going on in the world, I'm always thinking, keep going. There could be a war going on. I'm building new businesses. There can be anything going on. Breakup, divorce, death of a loved one, sickness, ill health, whatever. I'm going to keep creating products. I'm going to keep earning. I'm going to keep exercising. I'm going to keep enjoying life. I'm going to keep talking to women. The show must go on. It must always go on. I had to share a story today with one of the saints in a consultation. I said, hey man, I know a young man who is going through one of the greatest tests. The test of life and death, our greatest test. And he's going through it early. And guess what? He's acing it. A+ on this test. Man's never complained one time. I've been waiting. He never has shown up and complained once. let that be motivation to you. Let that be. I said, you know what? Instead of having Michael Jordan on your wall, you should have this saint on your wall. Yeah, this young man who's still creating products, even though he's experiencing tremendous health challenges, you should have a picture of him on your wall because he's performing like Michael Jordan at the elite level while not having the basics in order. Yeah, it's easy to play like Michael Jordan when you're in good health. A lot harder to play like Michael Jordan when you got a sprained ankle, you done stubbed your toe, you got a broken rib, you got all these issues, but he still stepped on that court and playing hard as hell. Shout out to Major Mind. I just want to share that with you guys because like if you have any excuses, get rid of them. They're ridiculous. Okay? There are no good excuses on the planet Earth anymore. Get rid of them. But here's the thing that I always tell you guys. None of that matters to me. What I'm teaching you to do, the 3 Sins Bible doesn't mention money, does it? Be yourself, be good to yourself, be good to good people. There is no money mentioned there. I'm not here to teach you about money. I'm here to teach you, number one, to dive into yourself, figure out who you are, love and respect yourself. Go for the best in this world for yourself. One of the saints I was talking to earlier, he says, I look better than this girl. And, this girl is like displaying these bad behaviors. I said, she's not worthy of you. I tell you to go for the best. She's not the best. You know that. Here's the problem. You're not showing self-respect. To want respect from the world outside, fine. But at the least, get respect from the world inside. Get respect from yourself. When Marquette walks through the United States of Marquetica, Marquette getting respect. When Marquette is in Marquetadelphia, Marquette's getting respect. When Marquette is in Marquetafornia, Marquette's getting respect. What I mean by that is in your internal world, in your self-talk, in your thoughts, have respect for yourself. The world might not always respect you. They might not always recognize you. The least you can do is respect yourself. But guess what? 9 out of 9, when you respect yourself, you set the price high, the world's going to pay the price. They're going to give you what you asked for. You set the price high, they're going to respect it. I promise you. Anyways, I just wanted to share this time to, fellowship with you. And truth be told, the only reason I ever talk about money, if you really want to know, the only reason I ever talk about it, in fact, is the same reason a P wears jewelry and fancy clothes, because it ensnares the mind of a HOE. That's why. It captures their mind because they have a petty mind. And similarly, no one wants to hear advice from someone who hasn't made $1 million, right? You only want to hear advice from someone who's made $1 million, whether they're a rotten animal or not. So you have to establish the baseline of credibility within the context of a capitalist society. No one's judging me based on my moral output. You see, people are much more interested in what kind of car I drive and what kind of house I have and what countries I've traveled to and what kind of women I've slayed. They're way more interested in that than how much money I've made for other people. Like, no one seems to be amazed by that. Amazed by the fact that we're sending out $13,000 this month to people like you. Not a giveaway, but I helped you earn the money yourself, and you'll be able to do that for the rest of your life. Like, that doesn't impress anyone. People more so want to know, do I drive an exotic car? Do my car doors go up like that? Do I have an antique Rolls Royce in the garage? Like, that's what impresses people, and the jewelry and all that stuff. So that's why I have it. I have it so that I can have credibility. So you listen. That's why I have it, right? Just in case you were wondering, that's why I talk about it. That's why I have it, because it gives me credibility with you guys, because otherwise I would just be some N-word. And I'm not saying that from a Caucasian perspective. I'm saying that from everyone's perspective. Black people, they look at me like I'm just some N-word. White people look at me like I'm just some N-word. And that's why you got to have all those other things, because somehow you can't hear a wise man's wisdom without knowing he's giving you wisdom while sitting on top of a mattress of money, which is ironic because recently you would have heard that the girl who committed that $1 billion fraud, the Theranos girl who just got sentenced to 11 years, you listen to her talk and you can tell she's not typically intelligent. It's obvious to anyone who's bright. Her speech patterns, the inauthenticity that she engages herself with. But People bought it because she has the right look. You have to understand appearance is important. You know, there's certain things that are going to get you a particular outcome. Like, for example, why did Kevin Samuels wear business suits in his live sessions? Well, because it looks like you have authority. The truth is, Kevin Samuels was never a businessman. Full stop. He was not a guy who got on flights and took first class flights or flew private to foreign countries to do deals with government or do B2B deals. He was never a corporate business guy like that. There's just no evidence of it. He was never that. He literally sold perfume at a perfume counter. But he was intelligent, and he said he was an image consultant, and he knew how to use image to get people to listen to him, young people. And that was very intelligent and strategic on his part. And this is an outfit that captures the HOE and it captures young men. And I use it strategically, but in every case, it's a costume. It's a costume in every case. In every case, it's a costume. You will only ever see me if you're looking into my mind. That's the only time you will see me. Everything else is a shell.